Welcome to Thriving is a Goal. My name is Tim Chan, and I'm with Mark Letchumanan, and we're glad you joined us today. Mark, how are you doing today?
Doing well, my man. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Excited to record this podcast about teams. So today we're talking about different ways a working genius can benefit teams. And here's a few benefits I've seen as I've worked with teams. When everyone on the team goes through the working genius and understands the concepts, there's a bit of a shared language that can be used. When someone says, hey, we need some discernment help with this project, then everyone kind of knows what that means and knows how to contribute and what ways to best add value.
hmm
Another benefit is that team members can then tap into each other's geniuses, especially when there are frustrations that you feel. And so, for example, enablement's one of my frustrations. And if I need to do a project that requires a lot of enablement, I may recruit one of my team members who has enablement as a genius to come help me. And it's a win-win here because they get to do work in their area of genius, which gives them joy and fulfillment. And I get to do less in my area of frustration, which saves me a bunch of my energy.
hmm
And then if my colleague needs help in the future, I can happily lend my geniuses to assist them. And it's win-win in the other way. And so knowing your team's geniuses and frustrations really helps you better assign tasks and build teams for projects, just knowing what everyone's geniuses and frustrations are. And I think overall, this improves the productivity and morale on a team. What do you think, Mark? What are some benefits you see in terms of working genius for teams?
Yeah, working genius has a lot of great implications for teams. I find it does reduce kind of the guilt and judgment people feel on teams sometimes because they're maybe not sure what the team is looking to them to do. And maybe they're not sure what they're depending on other team members to execute or carry out. When you're really clear on what your geniuses are, people start to look to you to fulfill your genius, and you start getting credit for things that you know you're good at, and you can also start passing things off that it's not your expertise or forte. Patrick Lencioni likes to say, advertise your frustrations, make them known so that people know not to come to you for certain geniuses. I
Hmm.
always like telling my friends not to ask me to help them move because I hate moving. And that requires tenacity and enablement, two of my frustrations. And so
Hmm.
I've let all my friends know this now, and they still ask me to help them move, but at least, they're aware that I'm suffering because I love them.
Yeah, it's costing you a lot, so they really owe you one.
Absolutely. And more than just pizza, like a lot more, maybe money. And then the areas where you shine, it's a little bit of an ego boost, and it's okay to shine. It kind of lets you know, hey, I'm good at discernment. I'm good at wonder. The team is depending on me to be good here, and I am allowed to be good here. I'm allowed to be better at this maybe than other members of the team.
Yeah, and I think it really does create more empathy within a team. Not everyone is good at everything. And so when you understand people's frustrations, you can be like, okay, you give them a little bit more grace, knowing that it's actually costing them a lot of energy to do this part of work. And there's less judgment there. And they can feel less guilt about, just not being great about that or just being tired about that if they really need to do that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what it looks like for a team to go through the working genius. And so I'm going to run through what I typically do when a business or a team hires me to take them through the working genius. So there's four parts. The first part is that I send everyone on the team the assessment. It's 42 questions, multiple choice, and it typically takes people about 10 or 15 minutes to complete. And once you finish the assessment, you get emailed a PDF of your results right away, and you can review them and read through what it means. Then I set up one on one debriefs with each individual on the team, either in person or online. And I'll walk them through their geniuses, competencies, and frustrations. And we'll discuss the implications of the results on their work. And it's usually pretty helpful for people to reflect on different situations or types of projects that they see their geniuses or frustrations at work in. And during this session, there's a lot of aha moments. People are getting a better understanding of who they are, these concepts, and how it applies. And they're also getting a better understanding about, why they really love a certain type of work and why certain types of work really frustrate them and are a struggle. And then we'll discuss some strategies about managing their frustrations and ways that they can lean into their geniuses more. So, next, I do a team session with everyone on the team. And so I'll teach a few concepts about the working genius that we'll go through in our podcast today. And then everyone on the team gets a turn to share their geniuses and their frustrations and give some examples of this playing out in their work. And this just really helps everyone on the team better understand their colleagues. Next, I'll do like a hands on activity where I'll divide people up into teams and they'll actually work on a small project together. And this makes it a little bit more fun. So we'll debrief and analyze what happened through the lens of the working genius. In one of my team sessions, what I did was I gave each team the challenge to build the tallest freestanding tower using a box of just random household supplies I found lying around in my house. Some newspapers, takeout containers, chopsticks. I had a balloon in there that I stole from my kids, some other random things. To make things interesting, I divided up the teams according to their geniuses. And so the first team I call Team Tenacity, and that included everyone with the geniuses of enablement and tenacity, really good implementers. And this team actually got to work right away, built the tower. They were finished in like 4 minutes, even though they had 15 minutes to complete the tower. The second team I called Team Wonder and included everyone with a genius of wonder. And this team actually approached the tower completely the opposite. There was a lot more discussion,
Hmm.
sharing of ideas. They actually didn't start building the tower until much later on. You would appreciate this because, you've got wonder as a genius, Mark.
How big was their tower? That's what I want to know.
The third team included the only person that had invention as a genius in the entire team. And this team built and rebuilt the tower over and over again. And so they
Hmm.
actually had a lot of different iterations, tried lots of different things, and just moved really quickly that way. And so it was just fascinating for me to watch the differences of the different teams approaching this kind of challenges problem.
Hmm.
And then the last thing we do with the team session is that we go through the team map. And we'll talk about this more later, but we map out the entire team according to the 6 stages of work so that everyone can see where the geniuses are in a certain area, where there are gaps, and the implications of that.
Hmm.
And then the final thing that I'll do is I'll do a debrief for the leader of the team, or if it's a small business, then it's the owner of the business, or maybe it's the leadership team. And so we'll just debrief the entire process. I'll ask them, what are their takeaways from this? Because usually they'll see things that I miss just because they know their business better and they know their people better, and they'll have great takeaways and they share those observations with each other. And then I'll share my observations. And then we'll discuss the challenges the team is currently facing and how the working genius can apply to those challenges and help them figure out how to move through them. And then we'll talk about, how does the team continue to get value from the working genius moving forward?
And I've got to say, as far as team building exercises go, this, in my opinion, is the best one a team could ever do because you're getting to know each member's strengths and weaknesses, and you're within these sessions being encouraged to really rely on and understand how you can depend on each other
Hmm.
to do what one another does best. Not many trust or team building exercises focus on this sort of thing. And I found it really helpful when I've done it with teams.
So let's walk through a few useful concepts for teams to consider when it comes to working genius. Mark, can you walk us through one of them?
Yeah, for sure. So the first is the competency trap. A common question Tim or I'll get after people take the assessment is, how do I get better at my frustrations? And yes, you can build skill in all 6 areas of work and get better at your frustrations. But if you get too good at your frustrations or even your competencies, that can become a trap. I know, at least with my wife, she's a very smart lady. She can do a lot of things really well, but she will burn out easily if she spends too much time doing purely inventive or discerning type of work. It just drags on her, even though she's really smart and did really well in school historically. But if you ask her to execute on a plan or give her that blueprint, it's life giving, it's energizing. And so it's something to keep in mind that you can be very good at something. You can get praise and recognition from others, but it can still be a bit of a life drain or frustration for you. And the toughest part with this is when you're good at something, it's like a self fulfilling prophecy. Other people see that skill and then just keep coming to you over and over again to do that thing that you're good at, even if it's not truly life giving for you. I saw this great documentary on Netflix recently where this boxer was sharing his story about how he was pushed by his dad to be a boxer growing up because that's just what his dad thought a great man should be. And this kid was much more sensitive and creative and artistic, but he really got pushed hard to go in the direction of boxing. And ultimately, he became heavyweight champion of the world because he worked so hard at it, not because he enjoyed it or even wanted to do it, but because that's what his dad wanted him to. And when I was sharing the story with my wife, she said, "Why didn't he just quit once he like became an adult?" And the sad thing is at that point, that's what he was best at. That's how he was able to make a living. That's what he became known for. And so he had to kind of keep going with that. And doesn't this describe so many people in the workforce? They don't love what they're doing, but they don't feel like they have much of a choice because they built some skills, they got really good at it. And now this
Mm,
is the way for them to make the most money possible to take care of their family. So that's
mhm.
kind of a tough thing that happens.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just not sustainable to continue doing the thing that is your frustration, but you're good at. So, yeah, in the long run, it's just better to focus on utilizing your areas of genius more rather than building skill in your frustrations. Of course,
Mm,
there's no perfect job out there. Everyone's going to have to do sometimes the work that is in their frustration, but you can build skill in that area just for yourself, just to get by and complete those tasks, but don't be so good at it that other people are then asking you to do that work. So, yeah, let's take a short break before we discuss upstream and downstream work. So, in the working genius, the upstream work is wonder, invention, and discernment. And the downstream work is galvanizing, enablement, and tenacity. And they differentiate the two because the upstream work is a lot less visible because it's about ideas, it's about strategy, it's about decision making. And the downstream work is a lot more visible and it's easier to observe. It's more concrete. It's about execution, it's about implementation, it's about gathering people. And typically, downstream work is what people consider real work or being productive. For example, a complaint I get from people that I coach is that they're in too many meetings and they can't get their work done. But what they sometimes miss seeing is that the upstream work is actually done in the meetings. There is work that's being done, it's just not as visible and it's not kind of the completion work that the downstream work is. And so
mm.
being able to differentiate the work, explain the differences within a team, this helps because visibly the work looks so different and it helps everyone on the team appreciate everyone else's contributions.
Hmm. Now let's talk about responsive versus disruptive geniuses. Or you can also think of it as responsive geniuses being kind of like the rudder on a ship. You need water, you need a ship, and the rudder directs where the ship goes, versus a disruptive genius, which is more like an engine in a motorboat. You don't necessarily need the wind, you can just propel forward using the power of the engine. And so, three of the six types of working geniuses are what we call responsive, and the other three are disruptive. Neither is better or worse. And while we might not think of ourselves as being responsive or disruptive, being aware of how our geniuses show up to others can help avoid unnecessary conflict and frustration. So, the responsive geniuses, again, which are like rudders on a ship, they need to respond to something. Again, they need the wind, they need the water, or the flow, or the current. And these are the geniuses of wonder, discernment, and enablement. They respond to the world around them, to the ideas of others, or to the needs of their colleagues. So, for example, wonder responds to the environment within or external to an organization. and identifies the need for change. Discernment involves responding to the ideas of someone who invents and then gives thoughtful feedback. And enablement acts in response to the call of the galvanizer. They help shepherd and support initiatives into the first stages of implementation. The disruptive geniuses, like engines, they can get going all on their own due to some kind of inner spark or inspiration or drive. So these are the geniuses of invention, galvanizing, and tenacity. They drive change in the world, in an organization, and in the people around them. So the genius of invention introduces people to new ways of doing things. By definition, it's changing the status quo. Galvanizing involves getting people excited about what they're doing and gets people to think about changing what they're doing and to adjust their focus and redirect their attention to something new. This causes disruption to people's comfort zones. And then tenacity is all about getting people to change their intensity and standards to ensure completion and success.
So let's jump and talk about team maps. Team maps are a way to just visualize everyone on the team, their geniuses, competencies, and their frustrations. If you can visualize 6 boxes, 3 on the top, 3 on the bottom, each represents a different stage of the work. On the top left is wonder, and in that box, you would have 3 columns: genius, competence, and frustration. And in each column, you list the names of the people with the genius of wonder, those with it as competency, and those with it as a frustration. I'll just use our small, thriving is the goal team as an example. We've got you, myself, and then Jake, who does the podcast editing. Under the genius column of wonder would be Mark and Jake. And then under the competency column would be myself, and we wouldn't have anyone in the frustration column. You can see that just very quickly on the team map, there isn't a shortage of wonder energy in our team. And if the 3 of us were to get together, Mark and Jake would probably think of a ton of possibilities for the podcast, be able to identify the issues we're currently having, and just have a lot of that wonder energy there, which is great. Seeing this whole map helps the team be able to quickly identify, oh, yeah, there's the lack of energy in this stage of work, and there's a lot in this stage of work, and what are the implications. Then you can start discussing some strategies for addressing, you could call them weaknesses in the team. Just using our team as an example again, our biggest weakness is tenacity. We've got Mark and Jake has this as a frustration, and I have it as a competency. And so what does this mean for our team? It means that we just don't have a ton of energy for finishing the work. And we have all the skills to get it done. The podcast is out there, people are listening to it, but it's taking a lot of energy to get there. And our strategy for addressing this is that we've taken our time for producing the podcast, recognizing there's a limit in this tenacity energy. And so we're going to get it done, but we're not going to burn ourselves out in the process. And so what we've done with this project is we recorded the first 4 episodes in the summer. And then through September and October, we focused on editing. And now we're into November, and we're starting to record the last 4 episodes again, just kind of spreading it out there.
It's amazing that we're even doing this, Tim, really.
Yes. There's a team I work with this year whose biggest weakness was galvanizing. And so out of a team of 10 people, there was only 1 person with galvanizing as a genius and 1 person having it as a competency and 8 people with it as a frustration. And we could see that getting the team together for team events or any type of kind of working together as a group was difficult. And we also saw that the only person with galvanizing as a genius wasn't in a role that actually allowed him to use that genius for the benefit of the team. He was kind of in a siloed role. He was using it more for working with customers, but hadn't been invited to use that for the benefit of the team. And so that was an aha moment in going through the process. Like, oh yeah, there's this person that has this galvanizing energy and the rest of the team needs it. Maybe we can put him into roles that allows the whole team to benefit from that underutilized strength of his. So going through the team map can really uncover opportunities for rearranging or redesigning job descriptions or even the staffing of different projects. And also it works for hiring as well. And so to kind of look to see where there are gaps and as you're hiring to have that in consideration.
Team apps can also create a lot of grace for team members. when you realize what someone's good at, what they're not so good at. For example, I often feel a lot of guilt if I don't have something to look back on and point to and say, this is what I did today. And so for
Mm.
team members who work a little bit more upstream in the head realms, it's easy to get frustrated with them and feel like they're not doing anything or contributing anything. And it's
Mm.
also easy to overcredit the team members who are just executing all day long, executing. So just remember those executors might not be thinking as much as as much as you'd like them to. And those people with their heads in the clouds, well, they're working really hard.
Yeah.
They just need you executors to help them get some physical, tangible things done at the end of the day.
Yeah. Great insight. On a team map, the one thing that we'll do is we'll put an asterisk beside the team leader. And that's because it's pretty important to know kind of the team leader in this team context because they've got more influence. And so, Mark, do you want to talk a little bit more about that, understanding the team leader and his or her role within the team setting?
Yeah, for sure. In the investment world, when you're evaluating a company to invest in, one of the big categories to look at is company management. And when we say look at company management, we really mean the executive team or the team leader, because the quirks, the tendencies of company, what makes it great and what makes it not so great, can often be boiled down to the leader and his or her team. Leaders just naturally have a huge, maybe even outsized influence on what's going on in the company, and they might not even be aware of their own impact. They're just showing up to do their job, showing up to carry out that vision they have. And they don't realize that when they function in a meeting, they're just being themselves. They're not trying to moderate themselves or trying to be more balanced individual. If they're really strong in invention, all the meetings look like brainstorming sessions for inventing new products or services. Or if they're a strong tenacity person, every meeting starts off with, what did you do this week? And then they'll go through a checklist.
Hmm.
And so, because the leader has so much authority to work at their high level, big picture level, because that's where they feel most comfortable, it's sometimes difficult to bring in the other perspectives of team members who have different geniuses. Tim, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think if you're the leader of a team, taking your team through the working genius can really help improve your effectiveness as a leader. Not only do you understand outsized influence you have on the team, but then you can start thinking about how to help each team member succeed. And so knowing each team member's geniuses and frustrations kind of allows you to better set them up for success. And you can design their role and include their input in designing that role to take advantage of their geniuses and minimize the work that they need to do and their frustrations. For example, I know someone who owns a design agency and he hired a graphic designer to work with him. And at first, the owner's expectation was that this designer would be able to create original, creative designs. But when they started working together, the owner was a bit disappointed because those designs weren't as original or as creative as he thought or expected from a designer. And after doing the working genius, it turned out the designer's frustration was invention, but he had geniuses of discernment and tenacity. And
Mm.
then the owner learned that the best way to let the designer really shine was to brainstorm ideas together with a designer and then to let him refine the ideas and then execute them. And it was just a lot faster for the project if that's what happened. Instead of the designer getting stuck in creating the ideas, he could take some ideas and then discern and then execute. And so it
Mhm.
ended up working out really well. The owner's genius was invention. And the owner was actually holding back this entire time because he didn't want to step on the toes of the designer and said,
Oh
hey, I
man.
want the designer to go invent. But it worked better if the owner brought the ideas and then the designer took them and discerned them, refined them, and then executed. So having this better understanding of your team, that just, helps everyone shine a little bit better, be more productive, and everyone just feels better about themselves and about the team.
That's great.
So this wraps up our session on teams. Our next episode will focus on meetings specifically, and understanding the working genius can really help improve the effectiveness and the productivity in your meetings and make them more enjoyable.
Take care, everybody.
All right, we'll see you next time. Well, not really see you next time. I guess we won't even see you at all. This is a podcast.
We'll speak at you one way next time.
But we'd love to hear your thoughts and your comments. So feel free to leave us a comment on social media or send us a message. We'd love to hear from you.